The Outer Side is proudly supported by Tie Gear. Head to www.tiegear.com to explore the wide range of high-quality camping essentials, including guy ropes, screw-in tent pegs, tie-downs, and heaps more. Tie Gear. Adventure secured. Dog and Gun Coffee. Check out www.dogandguncoffee.com to grab yourself some bloody good coffee ready for adventure.
G'day and welcome to The Outer Side. I'm Tony, and in this episode I'm joined by Audi Croft. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Lee.
All right, we're going to do the fast five. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to answer with the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Now, you did just see me ask Al the fast 5, but I'm not going to make it easy for you, so I've got different questions for you.
I thought you might have, so I didn't even consider them.
Good. You get a free plane ticket to anywhere in the world. Where are you going?
Oh, it would have to be Ascension for the simple fact that it would stop Al from mentioning it every 5 seconds. Other than that, I think Portugal.
Have you been to Ascension Island?
No, not at all. But at least if I took him back there, then I
You
wouldn't have to
talk about it anymore. And Portugal, have you been there?
No, I haven't. I was supposed to about 7 or 8 years ago, and things just didn't transpire. So it's just that one place that I really want to get back to.
Oh, I appreciate
Throw
that.
the years over.
I've got a good mate of mine that's lived in Lisbon for a long time, and he just said that it's the most amazing place.
Yeah.
And he's meant to be a digital nomad that travels the world, but then he got to Lisbon and never left. So that says something.
That says a lot.
Yeah. What's the best movie of all time?
Best movie of all time? Oh my gosh, that would have to be a hard one. I couldn't say.
One that you've made.
Yeah, okay, how about we go for...
Fish forever! No bias.
So we can do anything? Okay, definitely fish forever.
I like that. If you could be any animal, what would you be and why?
I would have to say sausage dog. Because...
That sausage dog looks pretty happy at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Miniature dachshund.
Yeah.
We have my daughter's miniature dachshund,
Yeah.
and every night she's on the couch. She has prime position because everybody looks after her, and she's snuggled into Al. She gets fed everything she could possibly ever want. So yeah, definitely.
Do you know, it's really interesting that you say that, because I've known Al a very long time, and I've known Al to always have working dogs, and a dog is a dog. And then when I got here today and he's like cuddling up to the little sausage dog, I was like, how times have changed.
Oh, I'll have to show you. There's a photo of him last night, in fact. He's sitting there. The sausage dog is curled up, tongue hanging out the side, eyes rolled back in her head,
that
sound
Al or
asleep.
the dog?
No, well, they both look very similar. And he was rubbing her belly. So every night they have the ritual where he has to rub her belly.
I love it. There is one thing that a small dog is always good for, and that is softening the hardest of men.
Guaranteed. Although this one does a very good job as well.
Hello, yes. So for anyone that's listening to audio only, you're going to be going, what's going on right now? Well, I'm patting a dog, so sorry. You're one of many dogs that has been on this show, so welcome. What was your dream job as a kid?
Dream job as a kid was actually, I would say, journalism.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. What would you eat for your last meal?
In this household, it'd be fish.
Yeah, but you've got the choice of anything that you want, so not just what's in the freezer.
Oh no, it would still definitely be just lovely fresh fish.
Yeah, good. So, Ords, you are a fisho, you're a somewhat of a journalist now, and a videographer, but that wasn't what you were always doing. No,
I've had a range of jobs over the years.
So how did you get into fishing in the first place? Was it something that you grew up with?
Definitely, it was my dear old dad.
Yep.
And it was not so much going fishing as it was spending time doing something outside. And for us, it was heading out herring fishing or gardy fishing.
Yep.
And it was not your gun-ho type thing. Dad would go to sleep along the bench seat in the back of the Quinn tracks, and I'd lay on the bow and we'd put the old hand line through our toes and go to sleep. And then what we did catch, Dad was very strong on making sure that you looked after the fish that you had.
Okay.
If you weren't releasing it, you had to gut it, scale it, do all the rest of it. And then it was about going around the community and catching up with any of our older widows or anybody who wasn't getting out fishing themselves and delivering them a fresh feed of fish. So we only took what we were going to deal with that day, and so it was a big holistic sort of a thing when it came to fishing with Dad. Yeah.
Which I guess was less common then than it is now, right? In terms of like the respect for the catch and all that sort of stuff. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm from WA, so it was a common thing to see a lot of people with jewfish laid all over the deck and things like that, which we all had that mentality. We could bring as much out of the water as we wanted to, and it would magically be replaced and always be plentiful. So I think West Australians found out pretty quickly when it came to their jewfish, etc., that, and we're talking DHU fish, that
not Mulloway.
No, it wasn't an infinite resource. So times have changed, luckily. But yeah, I was very lucky. Anything that we were taking, especially fish-wise, it was a case of being conscious of how much you were going to use. We had a hard and fast rule: if it was going to be filleted, it was filleted within that day usually, and it was either prepped and put into the freezer so that it would last, or it was taken to give to those who hadn't got a feed or whatever. So so it was a nice way. I'm a country girl, so I think we're always pretty in tune with nature.
That's so nice though, like that community aspect to it, and it's like sharing a natural resource that you've got access to that someone else doesn't. I think is something beautiful, and that maybe we've lost a little bit in the society that we live in these days.
I think it can take a back step. For us, it was my dad was a small country town boy as well, so for him, he was always community minded, and the fish were just a way to actually go and make contact, check in on everybody without feeling like they were being checked in on,
it's like an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. And then it'd be an hour's yarn. And
I love that. I've got one of my neighbours now, he does the same with eggs, right? He's got chickens, and so he'll drop some eggs over, and it's an excuse for him to come and have a yarn, and it's great. Like, I love that aspect of it.
That's a sense of community that, was so, well, when I was growing up, it was very much about the town that I was in, and each town that I've lived in, it's had that aspect. So,
maybe not so much this town?
I am actually surprised. I would have thought that coming to Sydney, I never thought I'd settle in the city, but coming to Sydney and the sense of community that we've had around us has been really surprising.
Really?
Yeah, very much so.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's good. So from those early experiences fishing, that obviously sets the wheels in motion. Like,
definitely.
Pretty much every one of my, every one of my guests has said similar when I ask them how they got involved in the outdoors, and it's those formative years. And I think there's no secret that a big part of me doing this show is about my daughter, and I want her to be immersed in the outdoors, and I want everyone to spend as much time outside as possible, because I think it's really good for you.
Definitely, on so many levels.
So many. Yeah. But from those early years to where you are now, there's obviously a lot's happened in the middle. So,
for sure.
So did you pursue your desires to be a journalist from those young years?
No, I didn't actually. It probably stemmed from the fact that I had a father who was a very good storyteller, like somebody else that we may both know. Yes. However, no, life took on a different turn. I actually didn't fish much after my teenage years either. So I had my first boat when I was like 14, and that was life until I was about 18. Then I moved to the city, and life took off on a very different tangent. So no, I've done a lot of jobs, from sign writing to I've been a site clerk with BHP up on the mine sites. I've been a remedial massage therapist for about 17 years, 18 years.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I've done a lot in between. And then, believe it or not, as a 40-year-old, got back in fishing.
That's so good. But it's always in you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I loved it all the way through. It's just that life, it just wasn't a priority, I suppose.
Yeah, I get that. And I mean, I've fished my whole life, but I can definitely see, like, there's been ebbs and flows, right? Where all I do is fish, and then it takes a back seat because you're doing other things or there's other priorities, but it's always there, right? And something that you can keep coming back to.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think something that really appeals to me about fishing is when you see, like, really old people still doing it, and you're like, hey, you can still do this. Like, it's not like, I don't know, professional football where there's a
limited,
or cage fighting, there's a limit to how long you can do it for, but fishing, there absolutely isn't, right?
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, we've got friends down in Malakuta, and they've got their own little sense of community that's happening, where they all head down and fish off of the little fisheries wharf there.
How good.
And it's great. You know, they're from mid-90s all the way down to the young guys, and they all know that they can get down there and catch up. So
that's so good. Are they fishing for Ludrick?
No. I hadn't actually done that until I came over here.
Really?
And I've had I must admit, I think it's one of the best forms of fishing. I did it with the old, correct me if I've got the wrong, single pin?
Oh, center pin.
Right? Center pin radio. And it was my first time of doing it. And yeah, I did it with a whole community that were down fishing and yeah.
It's quite meditative, like watching the float, and like it's finesse fishing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I'd never done it either until I moved up the coast, and I always thought it was like an old man thing, you know, with like bits of weed and center pins or Alvey side casts and whatever. But yeah, it's like a little secret fetish I've got where I go and chase ludric off the rocks now, and it's great fun.
Yeah, I can understand why.
Fun.
And how simple as far as, you know, pulling up a bit of weed, hooking it on there and getting out. And I love that fishing can bring us back to the basics.
Yeah.
It's one of the few sports.
Absolutely can, and I think that's one of the things that like it's almost primal in some respects, right?
Yeah.
It's like that hunter-gatherer thing that's in all of us.
Yeah, I think so. And as you said before, anything outdoors, it's for mental health, for physical health, for sense of community, all those things, they're all encompassed in getting outdoors and doing something you enjoy. So yeah, and doing it as you say, you're taking your daughter out and you're wanting her to get immersed in it. All of us that have had that in our childhood have made, you know, as we go forward into adulthood, we take that healthy aspect with us and we usually pursue something still in nature.
Yes.
And I just think, yeah, let's get our kids out there a lot more.
Yeah, 100%. And that's honestly, that's the driving force behind this whole thing, right? Like if one person listens to this show and goes, I'm going to take my kids out fishing, or I'm going to take them out for a bushwalk, then like the job is done, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's so important, particularly as like life keeps getting busier and more hectic and more screens and more deadlines.
Distractions.
And it's nice to be like a little bit selfish and just go spend some time in nature occasionally.
Yeah, and you have to be present in the moment. You're not sort of lost thinking too far into the future. It's about what's either at the end of the line or what's down the path you're walking or whatever. So yeah.
We're going to jump ahead here because what you just said there, I need to ask you a question about. How do you balance being present in the moment when now you're deriving an income from filming what you're doing?
I would actually have to say that it's probably more of a centerpiece for what we're doing. I mean, you can't film a show that's revolved around the dynamics on a boat if you're not present in that moment. So that very moment that we sort of head off in the boat, you're constantly thinking about taking your viewers along on a journey. So if you can hear the water going past the boat, there needs to be the image of the water going past the boat. Yeah, and you sort of, I think if anything, it's trained me back into my senses as far as what can I hear, what can I smell, what can I, you know, all of those senses, and trying to capture imagery to go with all of that. Never mind Al's narrative in the background. That's a sixth sense in itself.
That's something else.
yeah. So I think it's a filming. Aside from the fact that when I first started, for a remedial massage therapist, really, to take on filming, it was incredibly stressful. But doing it with Al, where I was basically just filming what we do in a normal day anyway, it was a very natural step, and it was exciting to be able to try and do justice to what was happening on board the boat, what we were seeing when we were out on the water. And for me, that storytelling side of it really enhanced what was happening. Like, I get excited when we go out. Fair enough, we get excited when we go out anyway as to what we're going to see or whatever, but finding a way to be able to piece that together and take an audience on that journey and not leave them with gaps trying to work out to fill in is exciting. Yeah, and it's every day we head out, it's the energy that comes from it is I don't know, it's re-energizing in itself because you are back in that moment.
So cool. So by being focused on telling a story, you're actually more present than maybe you would otherwise be.
Absolutely. I think when I first started, I was thinking, oh my gosh, did I turn the mics on? Have I got enough batteries? You know, I was thinking about the things aside from it, all the peripherals to it, rather than what was actually happening. And then as we went through, the more days we spent out there, etc., it literally just brought all of that focus back into exactly being in that moment, for sure. So yeah, and I think that's why every single time we go out now, the peripherals are there, but you can manage it. You have to be dynamic if you're filming a show that is effectively capturing actuality. And in that case, you forget about all of that. You deal with it, you problem solve as you go along, because you're just trying to do justice to the real story that's happening. So yeah.
And you've got an additional challenge in the dynamic in terms of not only are you part of the show, but you are creating the show at the same time, right? So it's not like you have a film crew and a producer.
No.
You're doing all of the roles concurrently, right?
Yeah, I think so. Well, no, so the simple fact is that we work on a small boat. The more people we have on board, the less reality there is to it. So for us, it was a natural step for us to film what was happening amongst us, because El was always doing underwater. He's a great storyteller in himself. He's a passionate angler. So the creation side of it is, we may go out with an idea of what we're targeting, but the story that unfolds around that is exactly what happens in that day. So I think, doing it with Al has been an absolute breeze, has made it so much more enjoyable, but doing it amongst us filming has given it a different element. There's a rawness to it. We won't always get the focus happening. We won't always have, let's face it, as you would know, you're out in the great outdoors. There's no control to your lighting.
Oh, no.
The boat swung around.
I've got a whole catalogue of overexposed videos on my YouTube channel and audio issues, and luckily I have a very understanding audience. But it is the challenge, right? It's not filming in a sanitised studio environment, which I would like to point out would be far easier to control. But where's the fun in that?
What do they say? In a studio is the way to control it. Don't work with small children, which Al's perpetually a small child anyway. And animals.
Also same.
Animals, which Al fits into as well. But we've always got the dogs on board. We've got either Mahi, the silver kelpie, or we've got little Lou, the dashhound, who is supposed to be afraid of water. But the minute she sees a striped marlin out there, she's underneath my arm and trying to jump out of the boat.
Really?
Off the shelf to get to it. So
it's funny, we keep putting ourselves in these situations, right? Like, I have a psychotic Jack Russell that's 18 months old, and we take him out on we've got a 420 Renegade side console, and his favourite thing is walking along the gunnels while we're doing like 25 knots.
Yeah, right.
And it's really quite stressful. Now, he's a strong swimmer, but I'm sure that he's going to be quite shocked. Yeah, his legs are like
those legs
2 inches long.
Yeah.
But we keep taking him out, and I've given him numerous life bands from the boat, and every time I do it, my wife just shakes her head and goes, "You don't mean that."
Till the next time.
The worst thing that ever happened with young Barry, my Jack Russell, was he saw me catch a fish, and now whenever I cast a lure, he starts crying and yelping with anticipation. Yep. And then when I bring the lure back to the boat without a fish, he's like, Where's
so you get a sense of disappointment.
Where's the fish? Yeah. So he goes absolutely mental until a fish comes on the boat, and then he just sits back and watches it.
Yeah, radio.
But last time I took him out, we were flathead fishing, and I was de-hooking a flathead, and then I saw my dog levitate, and I realised that he had a hook and a little 3-inch plastic prawn attached to his foot. So I just grabbed it and ripped it out before he had a chance to realise what was going on.
Oh, you did well. You did very well. Look.
But children and animals, you're not meant to work with them. You work with one in the same in the form of Al.
Exactly, yeah.
So how did that come about? How did you meet Al? Because you're now married to Al McGlashan. So for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, check out the previous episode with Al.
Yes.
And again, we do not condone taking people out to sea and feeding them to sharks. Just thought I'd reiterate that.
Do not follow his advice on anything.
I would like my YouTube channel to remain active and not be cancelled.
He means in a, yes, let's go, metaphysical way.
No, I think he means
it. Yeah, unfortunately, I was trying to cover that off. But as I said, I got back into fishing when I was 40. I got into game fishing when I was 40.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
As you do.
As you do. Not intentionally, went to help a friend out who was one of those characters who always helps everybody else.
Yep.
And he was trying to keep our local fishing club going. So he actually came to us and said, would you help out? I need to get the committee happening.
This is in WA?
This is in WA, yeah. Up in a little country town, a country city called Geraldton.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so he was desperate to keep the committee happening and therefore keep the club going. And so I actually took up fishing. I wasn't going fishing, I was actually going to take on the secretary's role, and as you do, ended up with secretary and treasurer's role and helping coordinate the local tournament, and
Good.
Got back into it, gave me an excuse to really in the end, and as things unfolded, I ended up fishing our local tournament.
Yeah.
And when I fished our local tournament, found my new team sport, which I absolutely loved. I walked away from my first tournament fishing on a boat that had a history with nearly, at that stage I think it was about 18 years tournament been running for, and the boat I was on was one of the early boats to be involved in the tournament.
How cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So with game fishing, I then got into actually helping friends out on their charter boat, and they had a particular group that were coming on board that they needed an extra set of hands, so I left my business and went up to help them out. And whilst I was up there, I was told that we would have a filming crew coming on board. I thought they were doing something for SBS or ABC, little snippets. Nobody told me any more information than that.
Yeah, right.
And then we got everybody on board, and the filming crew were running late, which anybody who knows Elle will understand.
Checks out, yep.
Yeah.
At a coffee shop, no doubt.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Yeah.
And then, it ended up probably day 3, I think it was, somebody was asking me whether or not I watched fishing shows. And I must admit, I did say no, because they tend to carry on like they are. It was something terrible like, yes, they're carrying on like they're performing open heart surgery when they're catching a fish.
Yep.
Still nobody told me what was going on.
Good.
And I remember probably about day 5, and we would have been 120 plus miles offshore fishing in a sail fishery. And we had 6 anglers hooked up at the time. I was working the deck with Leah, one of the owners of the boat, and her husband, Captain Chad, was up on the wheel. We were all working the deck. We all had 2 anglers each to look after, and I saw the back hatch was up off the back of the boat and thought, what on earth's going on here? Like out in those depths and out at sea like that, safety is paramount.
Yeah.
So I'm signalling to the skipper to say, back hatch is open, and he's just shrugging at me, and I thought something's going on here. And I heard splash out the back, screamed out man overboard, went to go running for the ring, for the life ring to throw it, and next thing I know, up pops Elle, and he starts swimming away with his camera. And I just could not get my head around the fact that, being from WA, great whites are something
Large sharks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And especially, out in the waters where you've got a big school of fish feeding, etc. But yeah, he just swam away. So my poor anglers got abandoned, and I was just watching this.
Waiting for him to get eaten.
I was just watching this fool swim away. And if we look back now at that early footage, you can see, Elle's got this sensational footage of sailfish coming in on the bait, etc. And beneath it, you can see the ominous shark.
Really?
Yeah, which I don't know that Elle had seen at the time, but we were reviewing it for a show the other day, and there it is, just bobbing along.
Right. Just a small shark the size of a bus off WA.
Yeah.
So 120 miles. What's that, like 250 k's plus?
Oh, sorry, we're talking nautical miles out there. So yeah, it's colossal distance off. We were off on a seamount. It's
fairly deep water.
Yeah, definitely. And if somebody had just told me what his job was, I probably would have been better guarded for it. But in saying that, in times since then, I still get that same feeling of, oh my God, what is this man thinking?
Why are you getting in the water now?
Yeah.
I still have those thoughts as well, and I'm not married to him, so that's fair enough.
Well, I know originally, I think the idea was that I would be second camera. So my job was supposed to be second camera to him in the water. And I realised there was another name for that, and that is bait.
Yeah.
So the minute I was in the water, his chances of getting
You're the
taken...
teaser.
Yeah, definitely.
You instantly doubled his chances of not getting eaten by being in the water.
Yeah, and we've had it. We've had several times now. We were up in Shark Bay. We had what we thought was a small whale shark coming towards us, and we were on a jet ski at the time. Al's pulling on his fins, ready to jump over the back of the boat when it came up adequately to the surface that you could see it was not a small It's not a small whale shark. It was a very large tiger shark.
Oh wow. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So there's only one thing that probably scares me more than a decent sized shark, and that is that Elle's mum has told me that if anything happens to him on my watch, she's going to be my biggest issue. So I hit the throttle.
Yeah, I reckon mother-in-laws would be scarier than large sharks. So fair enough.
Definitely. I hit the throttle, and Elle has never forgiven me since. I called him out also when there was a big, I think it was a whaler from memory, with a whole school of cobia beneath it. Elle was sitting there and he was about the size of my fist, and the shark that was behind him was like that.
Wow.
And you can hear in my voice me screaming at him to get out of the water. He's hugging back in by the side of the boat thinking, this is all fine. Next thing you hear the big deep voice come on, like, get out of the water now.
Yeah.
So he jumped straight out. But
Yeah.
he never lets me forget it. He's always pretty unhappy with me.
Yeah, just, Chief Killjoy.
Sadly, it's always about the footage that he missed as a byproduct of
Always.
No.
So from that, and I mean, just you telling that story then, I can't even comprehend having 6 anglers all hooked up to sailfish concurrently.
Oh, look.
And then having a maniac that you've just met jump in the water. I mean, that would have been a fairly hectic experience as a deckie.
It was, well and truly. I'd gone from sort of just being conscious of my 2 anglers and where they were and signalling back up to the skipper. But that's kudos to, a great skipper. We were on a black, not on the Black Watch at that stage, we were on a West Coaster, and
Oh, that's like with the helm up the front and the big long back deck.
Yeah, so the skipper's way to buggery up there, way to buggery. And we don't have comms or anything, it's hand signals, it's, you're indicating who's bringing the fish in next. And it is, I would liken it to the back deck looking like one of those old knitting machines. There's arms and we've got anglers going amongst each other. But I was lucky enough to be fishing with Blue Lightning Charters up at the Montebello's for a number of years, and I would take time off of my business to go up there and work with them. And the experiences that come about as a byproduct of that, we had 39 sailfish caught in a day as the boat record. We've
unbelievable.
Yeah, a lot of different things. I think for me, taking on game fishing, 14 years ago, going back into game fishing, it became a team sport, but it also, once again, we get back to that whole sense of community, and anglers really do have a big sense of community about them. And for me, that was probably the most special part that came back out of angling. So, yeah.
Well, you mentioned that when you said about game fishing being your new favourite team sport. Was that something that, have you been involved in team sport previously?
I've always been involved in sport. So, country kid. You played netball and hockey, you played basketball, whatever it was, sport was definitely a big part of growing up in the country. So I had taken up running, and I was doing a lot of running, but that was a solo sport. I would go out, headphones in or whatever, and just run. And fishing brought me back into a team sport, definitely. I never, probably because of the calibre of the guys that I fished with as well, we don't claim a fish by the angler. That's
the boat, right?
Yeah, it's the team. It's the boat, it's the team. I've been really lucky to not fish with people who are competitive on board the boat, aside from Elle Coops and I. It gets pretty competitive.
Apart from your current crew, yes.
Yeah, exactly. But it's always been a team thing for me. So
yeah, and I think for anyone listening or watching that hasn't done any game fishing, they might be like, what are you talking about? It's a team sport. But it absolutely is, right? Like, successful game boats are successful because of the crew, not because of a gun angler.
No. Whether you're rotating around on the rods, whether your team is only as strong as the skill level of that team as well. So, you have to be good on the leader. You have to be able to tie your knots before, if something goes wrong, you've got to know that whoever's spare can get up there and get the rods and reels sorted, get back down there with what's required. Same thing as I think you and Elle would have discussed when we were hand lining what we thought was bringing in the lights, and we actually had a swordfish on it. On a boat, whether you're game fishing or whether you're just fishing, things can go wrong in a heartbeat.
And they always do.
And they always do. Murphy's Law prevails. But it's so important that everybody knows what their role is, and the more they're capable of doing all the different roles, the better off you are. And what's the definition of a team sport? Everybody's role is important in
Absolutely
that team sport.
that,
So,
right.
yeah.
And it's also like, you know, your skipper's super important, whoever's on the tag pole's
Yeah.
important, you know, it's,
Yeah,
everybody has a
definitely.
part to play, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I caught a marlin with Al, and it was quite funny because he said to me, "Oh, you've never caught a marlin? Oh, we'll go catch one off Sydney." And I'm like, I don't think it works like that. And of course, we go out off Sydney, throw the lures in, and 15 minutes later, I'm hooked up to a marlin. I'm like, oh, that was pretty easy.
So he did that to you as well,
Yeah, I
did
haven't
he?
caught another one since.
No.
But, you know, that happened, but it was a baptism of fire for me because I was like the quintessential jetty rat, and like I'd done a bit of flathead fishing, and then all of a sudden I'm getting yelled at and the boat's reversing backwards at high speed, and we've got waves coming in the boat, and I'm like, oh my
fishtail
God,
walking.
what is going on here? And it was sort of like, after that first one, I had to take a few minutes to really recalibrate and go, oh, okay, so there's a fair bit going on here. And then when the next fish got hooked, I'm like, okay, I've got to get out of the way, was basically, you know, what to do. But it's
Which is not easy on a trailer boat either, let's
not
be honest.
easy. And we were on quite a small boat back then, but that really opened my eyes to how important it was for everyone to work together. And, you know, when the skipper is barking instructions at you, to listen to what's going on. And
Definitely.
And it actually, when I look back on it now, it's being on the rod is, in some ways, I think the easy job.
Oh.
It's all the other bits going on and everyone feeding you the information. The angler really has to process the information. That's your job, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Winding a fish in and of itself isn't particularly hard.
No.
Within reason.
Working with the fish is, you know, there's, don't get us wrong, there's nuances that make a good fisho as opposed to
Of course.
somebody who just wants to rip the teeth out of them and get them on board the boat.
Absolutely.
But a cohesive unit working as a team on board a boat. And I think it doesn't matter whether it's a large game boat or whether it's a tinny. You've got a very small space really to be operating in, so you need to be, you know, you need to be aware of each other. You need to be, you need to know those jobs for sure, 100%.
Yep.
And the person who's just standing there with the rod, they're at least grounded where they are.
Yep.
They're, you know, they've got everybody else, as you say, whether they're barking orders. Which brings us to the other point. You cannot be faint-hearted on a boat.
I was going to say, you do need to have a thick skin.
You cannot. If you're getting into game fishing, do not go on board and think that you can be, in any way offended by anything that happens, because the minute that rod goes off,
Everybody starts yelling.
everybody starts yelling. And I keep saying to the boys, you can yell the same word 18 times. It does not tell me what's happening, so give me detail. And you'll have Al will be going, to the left, go around to the side, and then Coots will be going, and everybody's telling you where to go and what to do. And it's sometimes a case of working out which voice you have to listen to as well.
Well, it's funny, you know, because I don't do much game fishing at all. Most of my fishing's done solo, so I only have to yell at myself. But it's very similar to the four-wheel drive game, right? Like when you're driving up something particularly technical, the worst thing for me is when you've got multiple people giving you instructions. You're like, shut up. Decide amongst yourselves who's directing me, and I'm going to listen to one person, because otherwise you're all telling me to do different things.
Or it's whoever's closest to us and you're going to hear. That's what's going to be followed.
Or whoever you
on
trust
fully.
the most, maybe.
Yeah, designated. We need whoever's going to be the skipper that day. They're the one you're listening to. Primarily.
Absolutely. So from the Montebellos and then over to Sydney. So you've done a lot of fishing in between, though. You've now fished in a lot of different places.
Yeah, well and truly. I had sort of been mostly along the west coast. I used to love fishing up at Corroboree Billabong up in the Northern Territory with my cousin. Any chance I got, wherever I went, it was really funny because prior to meeting Al, wherever I went was still about wondering what fish were out there, whether I'd get a chance to go fishing, whether I was going to go and watch some of the locals fish, or whether I'd jump on a charter or whatever. So once I whet my appetite again with fishing, it's taken us all over the place. So we've just been to Fiji, we're off to Vanuatu on the weekend as well, and I don't know, we fished in Africa. Pretty much everywhere we sort of go, it's about throwing a line in, which is pretty special. So
would it be fair to say that remedial massage may not have provided you with the same travel opportunities as fishing cinematography?
Well, I would say as a primary, for sure. The interesting thing was that as a remedial massage, because clients were regulars, whenever they went on a trip, it was amazing how many people would say, so have you ever been to and would you consider going?
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So I had a lot of clients that I had the husbands and wives were both clients of mine,
Yeah.
etc. Probably part of the reason I went to the Montebellos to begin with was because I had also had the skipper and his wife and various family members as clients. So the two, let's face it, if you're out casting, what happens?
You get a sore shoulder.
Bingo. So the two actually went hand in hand.
Symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned, what was the name of the billabong you mentioned up in the Northern Territory?
Corroboree Billabong.
So is that barra fishing up there or Saratoga or what are you chasing up there?
At the time we were actually going out to get tarpon
Ah.
for the, my cousin's wife was looking after a couple of pelicans that had been picked up in Broome, taken, I can't tell you the exact story, but effectively the lady who picked them up thought that it would be an advantage to keep them with her as she travelled up to the Northern Territory. And my cousin's wife is very passionate about looking after nature, fruit bats, etc.
Yeah, right.
And so she had taken these two pelicans on until they could work out how to get them back and get them released. And apparently the pelicans knew the difference between their fish, so we had to go tarpon fishing to get the actual fish for the pelican that was fussy.
So what, the pelican only ate tarpon?
Only ate tarpon and wouldn't react. So from one end of the paddock to the other, if you held up a different fish, just look at you and then walk off. If you held up the tarpon, it would just come flying at you. It was amazing.
He knew what he liked.
Oh, absolutely. So it gave Scott a chance to get out to the Corroboree, which was his backyard, every chance he got, and I was fortunate enough to go with him. Yeah, so
wow,
pretty awe-inspiring up there.
That's amazing. It's yeah, just phenomenal, right? So you've done a bit of freshwater fishing as well as the salt, and you know, from herring to sailfish to marlin and everything in between.
Yeah. When I actually first met Al, he was saying about he went to take you out for a marlin fish. Well, Chad and I, the skipper and owner of Blue Lightning, were chatting about how to open up daytime sword fishing in WA because it wasn't being done. So for us in WA, sword fishing meant you had to get out over the shelf, which is 50 miles, and then you had to have two boats for safety reasons. You're in the shipping channel, you had to be in eyesight of each other, and it was a 24-hour thing. And to get a weather window that would allow you to travel out, fish adequately, and then travel back in was pretty rare when it comes to our winds. Yeah, so we were talking about looking into how to open daytime sword fishing. At that point, still nobody had told me what Al did for a job, and Al was on board the boat. And he had popped his head up into the cabin to recharge some batteries, and he's like, "Oh, you guys talking about sword fishing?" We're like, "Yeah." And you are used to people hopping on board knowing everything about fishing. That's another thing about fishos. Yeah. We all have very good opinions
of course.
on everything. And so, yeah, he'd sort of said, "Oh, I could probably help you with that." And we're like, being polite. That's awesome.
Yeah, good on you, mate.
No
Whatever.
Yeah, no worries. Anyway, I said, "Oh, have you caught a daytime swordfish?" And he's like, "Yeah." So Al, most people may not find this easy to believe, but Al is actually very humble. So he didn't impart what he did for a job, or anything like that. And yeah, he was taking Chad and I and Leah, Chad's wife, out to show us how to daytime swordfish effectively.
That's very interesting because I used to live just up the road from Al, not far from here actually, and I was, let's say, drinking heavily with one of our mutual friends, Tom Spooner, and got the call from Al when he got his first daytime sword, which was a little pup. Yeah. And the boys down in Tasmania had really unlocked it, Leo Miller and a few of those other guys who I think it's safe to say really sort of forged the path for that daytime sword fishery on the East Coast at least. And it was amazing to see how absolutely driven Al was to catch a daytime sword off Sydney. And when he got that first little pup, he was stoked, and then it didn't take long before he got a much bigger one. But it's amazing that that whole fishery is now really opened up all the way to the Gold Coast and right the way down to Tassie.
I think everybody's exploring it. WA, they're really starting to plumb the depths of the canyons over there as well, you know. And you say about in the early stages when Al was doing it, if you were to ask Al what his favourite fishing is, I can guarantee he'd say sword fishing.
Yeah.
For the simple fact that you're dropping a line 600 metres and you're looking for a whiting signal on the end of your rod tip.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
And he is as passionate about it now. You know, it doesn't matter whether we've done 3 or 4 days straight. Every time he gets out there, he's just as passionate about it now. So it's one of the added bonuses. I'm very lucky that when I fish with the 2-legged version of the Complete Fishing Bible.
Yes, absolutely.
And somebody who's, I mean, as passionate about the small fish to the bigger fish as well. So, you know, our life together means that we're out canoeing, chasing trout or something one day, and then we'll be sword fishing just a couple of days later, or off in another country fishing. You know, it's just, I consider myself very, very lucky.
That's so cool.
He's a bit of a special individual, but we just make sure he doesn't know anything about that.
You got to take the good with the bad, though, because when you say special, I think, I maybe think special in a different way. But, you know, it's something that I think I've talked about it on this show before, is for me, the definition of a true passionate angler is someone that loves catching all fish, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, like, someone who's like, no, I only fish for trout. I'm like, whatever, you're a weirdo. But, yeah, no offense to trout fishermen. A few of my very close mates are trout fishermen. But
and it's good to be dedicated.
Yeah, you know my thoughts about your weird behaviour, especially fly fishermen. But, you know, being like a single species angler, sure, whatever. But, like, for me, the people that you just, like, you can feel the passion coming out of them, it's people that get just as excited catching a whiting as they do, you know, a black marlin, or, you know, they're happy to chase brim, or, you know, it's that, I guess, holistic view of it, and still get the same enjoyment regardless of the size of the trophy.
Definitely. And although I hesitate to use the term of hunter, it is that aspect, and you say it's a primal thing. It is the fact that you can go out and understand what it is that you're targeting, mimic what it is that it's chasing, the science behind making sure that your line's the right line, your knot's the right knot, you're using the right gear, you know, whether you're sampling different lures, you're learning about that fish the whole time, and you're learning about its habitat, and that's the part that's I find most fascinating for the entire thing. I couldn't tell you half the time what fish I've caught. Like, if somebody was to say, what's your PB for whatever, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I have no idea, because each time it's about learning something new about that type of fishing or fishery or whatever. It's just that constant learning as well. So
I'm a bit the same, hey. Like, I measure fish, but
I measure them.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, I'll measure a fish and go, oh, that's big or whatever, but I couldn't recite a list of personal bests, but I can definitely, you know, I've got an almost encyclopedic knowledge of lures and lines, and I can remember what line class is on each of the reels of the many reels in my garage. And, you know, it's that, I think there's so much that goes into catching good fish consistently, and, you know, then you've got the whole weather dynamic, like, you know, and tides and moon phases and barometric pressure and all this stuff. And
the whole science
I think that's part of, you know, what we were talking about before, about how you can fish your whole life. And, you know, you see like the 90-year-old on the jetty, and they're still getting enjoyment out of it. And I think because there's still stuff to learn.
Yeah,
I don't think you can ever be like, I'm done, I know everything.
Well, you only limit yourself if you are. Look at how much of a cultural change we've seen from esky filling to now taking what you need, harvesting rather than just taking everything you possibly can.
Killing stuff,
you know, looking after what you catch, so that whether you're cryovacking it or freezing it or whatever you're doing, you're maximising the lifespan of that fillet or whatever. The way that you cook, you know, if we got a blue eye the other day, and
beautiful.
Oh, spectacular. We were actually filming an app for season 3 of Fish Forever, and I just said to the boys, I just want Al was keen to get out there and swordfish, as you can understand.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. We had Al's brother Stu on board, and he loves the electric, so he was putting the Beastmaster down, and I just said to the boys, I want as many different things to come up from the bottom of the ocean as you can possibly get, which will normally mean we'll get one species and we'll get it constantly. Ocean perch, you know, they just come at us left, right and centre. And the days that we were out there, we got this great range of fish coming up from, you know, ocean perch, which I had never tried before. And I have now tried. And
very nice.
Yeah, very impressive. To the blue eye, once you've got whatever fish it is, and if you're bringing something up from 600 metres down, we are on the Talaka bringing it up. We're not on the electric. Stu uses the electric, but almost all of ours come up on.
So yeah, it's a decent bit of effort.
You work out for it, well and truly. So when you get that fish up, if it's something that can't be released, then you want to do justice to that fish.
Yes.
If we've got with the blue eye, we've got broth in the freezer now that we keep for risottos and etc. We've every tiny little skerrick of fish, every tiny little skerrick of meat that has come off of that fish is utilised in some way. So whether we're doing pizzas with it, whether we're doing a pie with it, we'll just try and do justice to. We don't always get it right.
Of course not.
Yeah, there's some meals that you probably don't want to revisit there, but we try to do justice to it.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I've seen that, you know, and I think it's almost like, I don't want to say that I live in an echo chamber, but I surround myself with people that have similar mindsets in terms of like the way that they approach fishing and hunting and you know, utilising those wild protein sources. And I've definitely seen a shift in terms of respect for the animal.
Yes.
Utilising the full animal, and also things like brain spiking, like the Japanese ikijimi method, and bleeding fish and gilling them straight away and gutting them and all of that. And
icing them down and not leaving them laying on the deck.
I remember as a kid, like, you catch a fish and you just throw it in a bucket and let it flap around for a couple of hours until it dies, and you know, all that sort of stuff. And you still see that, but I think more and more people are taking the time and effort to learn about how to do better, and the results speak for themselves, right? Oh,
well, I think what we see at boat ramps and the conversations that we have with anglers, there's a hunger out there for education.
Yeah.
And if it's imparted in a way that is easy to consume for people, anglers are... Cue the sausage dog.
Cue the sausage dog.
Or she who will not be ignored.
Yes.
There's an absolute hunger out there amongst the angling community, the hunting community, all the rest of it, where if you can give the information to them, they'll run with it. They want the most out of what they've got. And so I think with the increase in education, there is definitely an increase in respect. The two are synonymous with each other. And to see that cultural change coming about when it comes to all of our natural resources, it's heartening. I think of, you know, when we were down filming the kingies up the river, we were catching the spectacle in season 1 of these yellowtail kingfish smashing the prawns up and hurting them up against the bank. For us, visually spectacular.
Oh, it was amazing footage, amazing footage.
We were lucky that, you know, we were able to get out there and see that. But the interesting part that we didn't actually catch on film was that there were anglers also doing the same thing, chasing them along the bank. Now, the older generation, which when I say the older generation, they were probably only in their late 30s, early 40s, they were catching it, flicking it up onto the bank, and then not wanting to get dirty, kicking it along until they could send it back into the water. But the young teenagers or pre-teens that were fishing with them were unhooking it, picking it up gently and putting it back into the water. So you look at that and go, oh, wow.
Yeah, that's good, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think the kids that are coming through are showing that they really want to know how to do it right. Our kids, you know, they've got an appetite for education in every aspect. They want to have an opinion, but they want to form their opinion up by gaining the knowledge themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, we could be in good hands, hopefully, for the future.
I hope so too, and I've seen similar, fishing off the stones up the coast. I see a lot of younger kids now, and I mean like kids,
Yeah.
and they're catching good fish and bleeding them and icing them down, and I'm like, man, when I was 12 years old, like I wasn't doing any of that stuff. Like I also wasn't very good at fishing back then, and these guys and girls are, lure fishing, and they've got great gear, and they're fishing light, and they're really taking a keen interest in it. And I think it gives me hope for the future as well, to see that coming through. And obviously they'll educate their mates, and I have conversations with kids about, they see me brain spiking a fish and go, oh, what's that? And they're showing a really keen interest in learning more and being better, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And it'll be interesting to see as your daughter grows, because she's only a bub.
She's 1 year old, but she's already been out on the boat multiple times.
Yeah, wonderful.
She's been on a number of fishing trips. Apparently it's not ideal to take them rock fishing at this age. I've asked my wife a few times, but I've been told that's off the cards.
I'm sticking with your wife for that one for sure.
Yeah, but estuary flathead fishing, she's done a fair bit of that already.
Yeah,
and
wonderful.
I can't wait until she's old enough to really get amongst it.
Excellent. So are you going to do the same thing as what Al did with poor little Coops?
What's that?
So when Coops was little, apparently it was not unheard of for Al to actually gaffer tape Coops to the seat to make sure that he was safe. It was Al's version of a
seatbelt.
Yeah, definitely. So luckily Coops has fond memories of that sort of thing. But I think, I've spent time with the fishing club that I mentioned back in WA, and we would be holding the casting comps at the boating, camping and fishing shows, etc. And the amount of times that we would get kids coming up just saying, oh, look, can you just show me how to cast? I was probably not the best one to show them how to cast. I'm keen. I don't say I'm good, I'm keen.
Yeah.
But, as soon as you get them out, and boys and girls, and I know that the topic comes up of parity, etc., of getting women out there and fishing and everything else. I was lucky. I had a father like you who, if it didn't matter whether you're a son or a daughter, if you were interested, then that was the biggest part of the job done. And so we were encouraged to get out there and do whatever we could at any point. I would see through the casting comps, the kids would be coming up and the girls would sort of timidly be standing back to start with, as a lot of the little boys would as well. But once they got out there and got into it, once again, comes back to that whole thing where you're in the moment. They were oblivious of whether somebody was standing right behind them or what was happening. And they would get into that casting, and you could see the ones that would just be getting over the fear of oh, is anybody watching, and instead starting to really try and hone their skill of whichever way they were casting and the different ways they could do it. And their grandparents or parents who had them there would be saying, oh, right, that's it, we're off to get a rod and reel, let's go and start fishing. And I think encouraging our kids from a very young age and teaching them the right way to do it is definitely the way forward for the future.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. And also, I see fishing as like a great leveler. Like, you don't have to be, it doesn't matter if you're male or female. Like, there's some gun female anglers out there.
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of the few sports it really doesn't matter. I've heard every theory under the sun that women can be a better angler because one guy was telling me it was pheromones. Come on up.
We have a new guest on the show.
The Kelpie who thinks she's a lapdog.
Personal space, never heard of it. Oh God, mate, what are you doing?
But yeah, there's every theory under the sun. But I think it's the passion. Yeah. 100% the passion. Talking of passion.
Mate, less passion. Less passion.
Less passion.
Get out of here.
It's it doesn't matter, even when you're, what it's like when you're in a marlin. When I started, I was probably only just under 60 kilos, and we were in some pretty big oceans, and I was lucky that when I'd get harnessed up, I would have somebody, one of the team members,
grabbing the back of the harness.
And grab the back of the harness just to keep me grounded, because I was trying to get my sea legs. And when I'm on board and I'm filming even, Coops will still do the same thing to me now. He just puts one of his big hands on my shoulder to keep me level while I'm filming, etc. But with fishing, as I said, it doesn't matter what size you are, what age you are, if you've got a good team around you, then you're capable of doing whatever type of fishing it is that you do, from the largest marlin to sword fishing to herring fishing, bait fishing, whatever, and vice versa. If you don't have the right team around you, you probably shouldn't go fishing at all, and definitely not rock fishing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I'm not one to endorse I'm not going to say to anyone, you should get into ocean rock fishing, because I am aware that it is probably, I think it's like the second most dangerous sport after base jumping, which says a lot. But look, I've chosen to do it and I love it. And for me, it's as much about the environment as the fish. Yeah. The fishing is great, but also the element of danger is part of the appeal.
Yeah.
And being super switched on to your surroundings. So like you were saying about being present, I'm a nightmare with my phone. I'm like constantly connected to my phone through my work and everything else. And when you're rock fishing, you ain't looking at your phone because you will die. So for me, it's about being completely zoned in on what I'm doing. And it's very rare in my life that I focus on doing one thing at once. Which is also a big reason why I decided to do this show, so that I have conversations with people uninterrupted, apart from Kelpies. Because I think for me, it's about cutting out a lot of the noise around me and around us in life, and really just focusing on one thing.
And re-engaging.
I
think it's a big thing going forward. There's so many distractions in our world that fishing and podcasting bring you back.
And I've said it to a few people, like I've sat down with mates that I've known for 20 years, and I've learnt stuff about them that I didn't know. And the reason for that is, how often do you sit and talk to someone you know for an hour uninterrupted, without your phone or without anything else? So I think there's parallels there, but for fishos in particular, there's definitely something in the subconscious that draws us back to it all the time, right?
Definitely. I think COVID was a perfect example. When they tried to stop people from fishing, they realised it wasn't the way to go, and they opened up boat ramps, etc. again, and let people get out there. And I think for all of the noise that was around COVID, one of those interesting aspects that came out from it was that locking people out of the outdoors, locking them out of fishing or hunting or whatever it was, really did impact on them greatly.
100%.
So there's a lot more encouragement we should be giving to get people back out there.
And that was the irony of it, right? You've got messages from the government saying, social distancing, stay away from people, but don't go fishing or hunting or go out in the bush. It's like, hang on a minute, those two things, we can solve both of these problems at once here.
Exactly,
Yeah, it's, and what you said about, with me wanting to get my daughter involved in it, there's probably two reasons. One, it's very good for your health and being outside, but also I think something that's really important to me is around the provenance of food and where your food comes from, and having respect for what you eat. And in the first year of her life, my daughter has demonstrated that she shares the love of food that both her mother and I have. So
wonderful.
Look, she's going to be an eater, so we've got to know where the food comes from. And I think what you guys are doing in terms of the show, and you're showing, I don't know, I guess the flashy element of fishing and like the chase of the fish, but then there's also a really serious element to it as well, around sustainability and around respecting the resource.
I hope that's what comes across in the story as we tell it as well, because Fish Forever wasn't about having a show. It was about telling the story of 1 in 5 Aussie adults fish. That's a huge proportion of our population, and it's Al and I both firmly believe that education is at the base of how bright our future is going to be. Our sustainable fisheries and shaking off this whole mindset that you either have to be somebody who's all for total green. Anything that you do, any hunting you do, etc., is anti-nature, and instead looking at, we need protein. We want to know where our protein's coming from, whether we're hunting or fishing. We take care of our own product at all time. at all times. We have coops, all 6 foot, nearly 3 of him.
He's a large human now, and I've known him
is.
since he was a wee little
Yeah.
tacker, and he's not that anymore.
No, he's an absolute ball of muscle.
Yeah,
he's
a
a
big boy.
lean ball of
Yeah,
muscle
yeah,
now.
yeah.
And you know, for your kids, you want to know what they're eating. My daughter was vegetarian for a short period of time and then came back into the fold.
Welcome back.
Yes, and taken on a love of venison and etc. as well,
Amazing.
because of being in amongst our family. Like for us, getting dinner ready for night time is usually about what we've got in the garden, what we've got that we've caught, and the cuts that we've got, doing it justice, and then cooking it up as a family, and then sitting down around the family table and eating it. So, you know, it's that building on a sense of family and doing the right thing by the family. All of it falls in it. It's all, you know,
And it's
similar.
that's in our history,
Yeah.
in terms of how humanity has got to where it's got to, right?
Definitely. So coming back to basics for sure.
It really
Yeah.
is, but it's something that, you know, we're so disconnected from it. And everyone that's listened to a lot of these will probably be sick of me saying this, but I'm going to keep saying it because it's something that I truly believe in. But I feel like we're so disconnected from our food, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm so into fishing and hunting and understanding where your food comes from. And
Yeah.
and I think it's really important. And the more that we talk about it, and the more people get educated. And I'm not saying that everyone should be a hunter or everyone should be
No.
out there, you know, catching and killing fish, but having an understanding of where the protein comes from is very important.
Definitely, and I think with that comes that sense of responsibility as well, because there's nothing worse than heading out fishing and not being able to find whatever it is you're targeting, and an empty ocean. You know, like we can go out and I know you would have spoken to Al about the sightings of makos and hammerheads and things like that. You know, we used to go out and you would see those in the course of your day. You would expect to see one finning the water, but then you can go out and there's days where you don't see anything at all. And to me, it's a daunting thing going forwards, because you want to see bait on the surface.
Yeah.
We all know that you can go out chasing fish and not find what you
Yeah, it happens.
But ideally, we want to go out there and see everything thriving. So I think when you are hunting and collecting your own food, there's a sense of responsibility that is tied into that.
Yeah.
So you are only interested in taking, you know, I mean, I watched with Coops as a young 13-year-old. He was already thinking about whether or not he could get a clean shot on an animal.
Yeah.
And if he couldn't, he wouldn't attempt.
Yeah.
He would always be out doing his practice, his target practice, to make sure that when he did go to shoot, he knew that he was going to hit the spot that he needed to hit, and what that meant for what meat we could harvest off that animal. So
Yes.
to see a young boy who effectively has grown up immersed in it all with his father and his uncle and his grandfather, in this age of disconnect, it's very easy for the kids to have an apathy, a natural apathy towards that, and to see them coming through and not having that. Anything you can do to engage the kids as well as make them want to assume that responsibility is a pretty fantastic thing. So.
And the beautiful byproduct of that is you end up with a much healthier and better adjusted adult, right?
Oh, definitely. Don't tell Coops that yet.
I wouldn't.
We don't like to say.
It's all right.
We don't like.
He's
to
too
post
young
it.
to watch podcasts anyway.
Oh yeah.
I think he's below my age bracket.
Coming up 19 very shortly, but you know, Coops he has had the opportunity to be exposed to all of these things, but there's a lot of kids that can be exposed to this style of thing and still develop the apathy of a teenager or whatever. But you get Coops talking about it and the passion is there. He's been immersed in it. He doesn't take it for granted. I think the future's bright. Let's just say
Absolutely.
that for sure.
And that's a good message for everyone out there. Teach your kids about where their food comes from, get them outside and get them amongst it.
Yeah, for sure. Every chance you get. Not only does it mean you get the chance to get back out there yourself.
Yeah, it's a good excuse. I'm just saying that. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I can see where you're going.
I'm allowed to go forward driving and fishing more often.
Yeah,
It's all,
that's
you
it.
know, it's all
I'm
self-serving.
Just taking the door.
Yeah, I'm doing this for my kids, but also secretly for me.
Yeah, for sure. But no, it's an awesome thing, and I think it's too easy as a parent to, be so caught up in your busy schedules, whatever it is that you're doing, that time out in the great outdoors is about you unwinding. However, if you can find a way to do that with the kids intact, everybody benefits well and truly.
Then it's win-win.
Yeah.
Well, Ords, it's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I don't know if I've enjoyed it as much as this dachshund is enjoying eating that piece of venison, but
So we talk about the children.
the
pets
children,
as
and
well.
also the utilization of the protein. I mean, you are literally using every part of the animal because that dog is consuming that bone as we talk.
This little dog loses her waistline.
It just becomes a tube.
Oh, she does. She's well and truly into it. So anybody who thinks that, she's
Oh no, she's
A
seen
crow.
a bird. She's going for the bird.
yes, she was trained to
Good luck.
she was trained to get onto the fig tree, and the crows would get to the figs. So she does not like crows.
Ah, I like that.
Which, when you're that close to the ground, it's not that easy to spot a crow.
Yeah, that's challenging.
But yeah, thanks, Hank, for having me.
Really appreciate your time.
And I look forward to seeing your daughter out there as soon as she can walk.
Absolutely, you will.
You'll have to bring her out on the boat.
Yep, keen as. All right, thanks again, Ords.
My pleasure.
And we'll see all of you next time on the Outer Side.